Maserati hasn't had their own OEM sanctioned museum in quite some time. So one Italian entrepreneur decided to change that and basically purchased and curated their own miniature Maserati museum out here in the Italian countryside. Let's go inside and take a quick look. So right when you step in, basically inside this small little barn, a number of Maserati vehicles on display, starting of course with the new MC20, their latest supercar, right next to the original Maserati, the Type 26 race car, back from 1926, celebrating its centenary here at this little exhibit. And then a personal favorite of mine from their concept car and show car history, this is the Alfieri, a car they showed back in, I think, 2014, to great response. Everyone loved the look of this as basically a look towards the future of what could potentially replace the Gran Turismo series of sports cars and Grand Tours. But of course, as we know now, it never entered production. The Gran Turismo continued its long run before eventually entering its next generation, most recently with mostly similar styling cues carried over. But man, this was such a striking design. Don't know why they ever passed on putting this into an actual production model. Would have been really cool to see this. Just look at the styling elements. It's got the right amount of angles and hips, but also curvature around the entire body. Especially the front end is really striking. That's so cool. But then panning over here, we've got some more of their older show cars, starting with this one. I never really heard of this one. It's called the Chubasco. And obviously from the Wedge era, looks very, reminiscent of stuff they did with some of their more popular show cars like the Boomerang concept. You can see just very of its era in terms of its styling, the big angled greenhouse windows, massive intakes, those aero wheel coverings there, pop-up headlights. This was from 1990, a prototype that of course never went into production. I don't know if this one runs. Apparently it had a V8 engine. But then these two over here are some other one-offs that do run. This is the Type 124 concept from, or at least styled by, Ital Design. And you can see, of course, some of the cues that make their way into later Maserati production models like the Camden and the Ghibli. So perhaps this was a preview for some of that. You can see a pretty expansive interior. Interesting, like belt straps placed in between the seat cushions there. That's pretty odd. And there's the Ital Design Giugetto di Giaro badge on the side there. Pop-up headlights, of course. And then this next one, sort of a very similar iteration though, but this was another Ital Design concept here, the Simoon. Never heard of this one before either, but again, looks kind of like an evolution of the other one, the Type 124. Front engine V8 Grand Touring car, 4-seater, long notchback style with the massive glass windows and also very spacious interior. Coming to a point at the rear with their signature look of the taillights tucked under sort of that camtail design. That's pretty cool. And then if we keep going along the line here, this is one of their most classic cars, the A6 Grand Tourer Coupe, A6 G54 specifically from the 50s, and then followed up shortly thereafter by some of these cars here. This red one here is the 3500 GT. This is the 5000 GT. So of course, higher output vehicles with a larger horsepower rating here on the 5000 GT, around 300 horsepower, compared to the 3500 GT under 300 horsepower. But these are beautiful. Just look at how long the bodywork is. These were styled by, I think, Touring Superleggera, or at least 3500 was. You can see the badge there too, below the vent on the side of the fender. Love those old Maserati front ends. And then here we have some more of their upcoming sports cars from the past here, the Mistral Coupe. Then we've got the classic Ghibli. Of course, nothing like today's Ghibli sedan and even the ones from the 80s. But here was a big body V8 sports car, styled in this case by Ghia. This was also known as the Ghibli Ghia Coupe. That's got to be one of my favorites of the classic Maseratis, as well as some of the ones shown here. This is the Camden, styled by Bertoni in the 70s. Again, sort of an evolution of the design introduced in sort of a smaller package compared to the larger Ghibli. still a V8 powertrain. And then also a V8 here in the Bora. I love this one, especially just the overall silhouette of the coupe bleeding into these buttresses that are filled in with the glass here over this rear compartment. And the rear end really just puts it all together. I love the Bora. That is such a sweet car. You've got this like aluminum top, which is kind of interesting. So this was a Tal design in the 70s with Maserati putting the Bora together, and then that was followed up by the lower powered Merak. This was a V6, but you can tell basically a twin, just with some minor styling cues. This one was early 80s compared to the Bora first introduced in the early 70s. The one thing that I think did the Merak a disservice was they gave it these flying buttresses and got rid of that rear compartment and the glass that we were just looking at on the Bora. But I don't know, it kind of ruins the look for me. I think the glass was a big part of that design and the overall shape of the car at the rear. It kind of just, like, flying buttresses are cool, don't get me wrong, but the way these are executed, the car looks almost like it's supposed to have a pickup bed from certain angles. Of course, that's where the V6 engine sits, but they're cool nonetheless. But, you know, the Bora is the one you want from these two. Very cool. Moving past this, this is a Zagato Spider of some sort from back in the day. And we can look at some of their race cars. So here's the Maserati Coupe, the 4.2 Coupe, or the 4200 GT as it's known, but turned into the racing or challenge car from its time. So they called this the Maserati Trofeo, simply, for trophy. And I don't know much details on the one make series or the production numbers here, but you could, of course, you know, buy one of these and run it in the one make series that Maserati had at the time. Gran Turismo later had similar things with like the MC GT4 and stuff like that, but this came first, the Trofeo. Then you've got some sort of Ligier race car here that's Maserati powered that they've included. I know nothing about this really, but what is it called? It's the JS2. Pretty cool looking. Then we have some of Maserati's classic sports car racers here, the birdcage vehicles. This is a Type 61, which I'm somewhat familiar with here. It looks like maybe a different model year than I'm used to seeing, where they have the lower front ends with the more bubble-shaped headlights at the front. But that's a Type 61. This one is new to me, which is a Type 63 birdcage, and it is really alien looking. Just look at the expansive plastic windshield and window work that's been fixed around the cabin. You can see through to so much. The suspension geometry, as well as the fuel filling pipe, caps and pipe working there, as well as, look at that, that's the windshield wiper. They just mounted the motor directly under the glass, or this is not glass, of course, but they mounted it right there to just put the one little tiny wiper in there in case it rains, and then the tube chassis, which you can just see how exposed everything is and how lightweight and bare bones the racing was back at this time, with the seat, a little harness, shifter, pedals and wheel, and like no dash really, just this panel with some switches and dials on it sticking out from the side. That's really wild. Mid-engine, of course. Got the roll hoop for safety, I suppose, but then you keep going here, it gets even wilder, where these quad exhausts just shoot out of the back like trumpets positioned vertically. So weird. It almost looks like it's like, that's where you would have like a taillight assembly, but of course you have the little light right there, and instead you got these massive pipes just for show, I guess. They didn't have to orient them this way, of course. They could have tucked them underneath. Must have been an interesting challenge here. You can see a lot of the heat shielding and foil and stuff that's tucked in there on either side of those pipes to protect the rest of the bodywork and all the other components that are sitting underneath there next to them. That's really cool. Moving ahead, some other racers, maybe IndyCar and Grand Prix racers that I don't know too much about here. These are 6Cs or something? What are these exactly? These are, 6C/34, so 1934 Grand Prix racer, I guess, and a 6CM from 1937. But then this here is one of their most beautiful, highly valued classics here, the A6 GCS, styled by Pininfarina. Quite a looker with some interesting design features at the front, notably that like horizontally mounted oval-shaped grille with the big Maserati trident front and center, where it kind of juts out little bit awkwardly from where the rest of the bumper and the headlights are mounted. But a distinctive feature of this car, revered among collectors in the classic space. They consider this one of Maserati's finest design collaborations. Really tight interior. Of course, ultimately, just a sports Grand Tour like that earlier A6 we saw at the front of the exhibit. But then here, Pininfarina got a hold of it and put their unique touch on the design styles of the rest of the bodywork. That is pretty cool to see in person. And then that's the whole exhibit here. Moving back to the MC20 we saw at the start, there's the MC20's V6 Nettuno engine over there, and some other engines shown upstairs, along with a little bit of an evolution of the Maserati Trident logo over the years up to today. But that's everything here. And I just personally love the show cars. Of course, very cool to see the Alfieri being a modern one that I'm more familiar with, but always love a glimpse at some of their past experimental prototypes and design show cars that they put together to make a statement back in the day. But there's a quick look at the miniature Maserati Museum.